You like to do things your way. Quitting tobacco is no different. When you're ready to quit, choose the path that works best for you. We can help. Create a personalized quit plan and find a range of tools to help you quit smoking for good.
You're listening to Meet Long Island, where every week we speak with business owners from all across Long Island and dig deep into how they started, how they grew, and what they are doing now. You may recognize some of the people and places behind them, but we will uncover the stories that you haven't heard yet. Your host, Arthur Frischman, is a native Long Islander, a Northport Tiger, and launched his first business here at the age of 16. As a serial entrepreneur for the last 40 years, he loves speaking to other business people about their daily grind and what keeps them in the game. Thanks for joining us today. Now, let's go meet Long Island.
Welcome to episode 3 of Meet Long Island. Before we get started, if you are on YouTube, please go ahead and hit subscribe and hit that bell, and we will notify every time we get a new interview live. And of course, on Anchor or Spotify, hit that subscribe button, and you'll get notified every time we have a new podcast. Today, let's welcome David Kaplan. David is born on Long Island. He is a Lawrence High School tornado. He is a owner of a Voice on the Run and a voice actor. David, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
David, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I was, like you mentioned, I was born on the island, so I'm very much an island boy. Born, raised, bred, live here still, raised my family here in Huntington, right in the middle of the island. Don't plan on leaving anytime soon. It's in my blood.
I've done the leave and come back, so I know the feeling you got. So you are a voice actor, David. What is a voice actor?
Voice actor, otherwise known as a professional pronunciator. I'm sure I said that wrong. In the simplest terms, I'm a professional announcer. But when people think voice actor, very often they think audiobooks. And I have done some audiobooks early in my career. It's a great place to get started because there's not nearly as much pressure as there is once you get into the stream. The ebb and flow of the real business of the business, which is insanity. And then to just add to the insanity of what I do, my son is also a full-time voice actor. So we share studio space. We built a studio in my home. So the level of activity that goes on here day to day is like nothing you could imagine. And at some point during this, I'll take you down to the studio and give you a tour. If I can, if my son allows me to get in. But as a full-time voice actor, I'm responsible for certainly commercials, promos, movie trailers, anything that speaks comes right from Huntington. You know, people are amazed at what it is I produce from my home. Times 2 now. So it's an incredible business. There is no shortage of work or opportunity in this business once you get to a certain level, which I have certainly gotten to many years ago. It's amazing. You know, it's the golden handcuffs. And what that means is I'm tied to the studio. I can't go too far. I'm on call for people all the time. Not to mention, if I want to be successful, I have to be auditioning all day, every day. And there are some days I'll do as many as 80 auditions in a day. Whereas there are a lot of voice actors that don't do 80 in a month. Like they say, the more you throw at the wall, the more is going to stick. So auditioning for everything is key in my business. It's just a full day from 6 in the morning to midnight of go, go, go. It's negotiating with people, contracts, non-disclosure agreements. You know, when you run a business like any business, it's all the elements. Early on in my career, I had to go into the city for everything, which was easier in a sense that I would walk into a booth, they'd hand me a script, I'd do my thing. On the way out, they'd hand me a check, I'd go home. But the volume didn't exist because you spent time on the train or driving in, paying for parking. I mean, it was not, the ROI of going into the city for work was not so good. The internet came along and changed all that. Online casting, it's a totally different industry. I mean, when I started in this business, we used to record on tape. I know you remember that because you're about my age. We had to edit it with a razor blade, and we would send reels out as auditions. Totally different business. Where it is today is amazing, but it's really rapid fire.
You have one of those businesses that it's amazing how it's and the technology has transformed your business. Just actually listening to you, the evolution of this, you used to be out and about, but now it seems that the internet has actually given you a bigger business, but made you locked to a certain location. Do you feel it that way?
Yeah. And I took a lot of the being locked and said, this isn't cool. I have to make this more portable. And I guess maybe it's about 8 years ago, as equipment became less expensive, sounded better, easier to work with, I said, I have to be able to go places. So I created a crash bag, which was a red backpack containing everything I needed to record in a mobile scenario. I had to have a hotspot, I had to have a laptop, batteries, backup. I mean, just the bag must have weighed about 30 pounds. And it went every place I went. And I mean, to this day, when we go on vacation, the first thing we do when we get to a hotel is I have to build a studio, because even though I'm on vacation, I still have to work, which kind of sucks and kind of doesn't, because I love what I do. So it doesn't feel so laborious, but the family's used to it at this point. I mean, I've walked out of movies. I walk out of restaurants all the time. My wife's used to sitting there by herself for a few minutes while I go audition or do a job that has to go out. So I made it portable because the boundaries of the Monday through Friday disappeared a long time ago. I work weekends. People want it when they want it, and I work globally thanks to the internet. So it's tough to shut off. And that's, I forget what the question was you asked.
About how the internet has changed, has really changed, and you're describing it.
I made it portable. And in those early years, people, there are voiceover conferences that I attend, and people were flying me around the country to speak at these conferences about how I was able to make it more portable so I wasn't stuck at the studio. And everybody just kind of followed my lead, and we are where we are today. And it's pretty cool. There are once in a while I'll leave the mic home.
In general, you see on voices.com all the different jobs that you do, but you're talking about the emergencies of it. A regular commercial or a regular job probably is not an emergency at this moment, but you and I have been sitting around, we were talking about this before the show. We were sitting around talking, and it was in the fall, and you were getting called to do, because of some storms coming up the coast. I believe it was down in Florida, the Carolinas, wherever it was, and you were getting called. That's the emergency part about it. Explain what we were talking about.
Yeah, that's a scenario where power companies have got to get emergency announcements out for storms that are approaching. And there's usually a few days leading up, like any good hurricane, so there's time. But there's not a lot of time. So what happens is I get the email at the same time I get the message that you're on, we need you, and the announcements have to go out. And they're usually about preparing. It's all storm preparedness. Although occasionally there's a real emergency where, like the wildfire situations in California, these announcements have just got to go when they have to go. My turnaround time for announcements is usually 4 minutes or less from me getting pinged to the announcement going out, and another minute for the municipalities to go ahead and put those messages out to everybody that needs to hear them. It's breakneck speed, but that's how it has to be.
I'm not really sure I realized the speed and the turnaround and how that structurally worked. That's pretty impressive that it goes that quickly to live. But I guess you're in an emergency situation. You have no choice. So this, being a voice actor, you're a business. Your product is your voice. Your product is that's your product and service. So like anything else, you're starting a business. You started this 2010. How did you get into, you have a film and video, it's film and TV background, or radio and TV. How did you get into this? How do you start this?
Well, it's interesting because at age, I don't know, maybe I was 8 years old, and my dad brought home a cassette recorder, which was new technology at the time. And I was hooked immediately. I was like, wow, you can record your voice and play it back. And I knew that that's the direction I was headed in some way, shape, or form. In college, again, local boy, I went to Post, studied communications, actually started as a film major because I was a director, and then shifted over to to radio and television production. Ultimately moved on to a position with CBS right out of school. So at graduation, they gave me the honor of bringing the graduating class, the communications class in. I carried the flag. Everybody was so proud I was working for CBS. Spent some time at CBS, NBC, ABC, everywhere. Started in the mailroom every time I made a move. And that was a great opportunity. Back when there was so much hard mail, now it's all email. But I met so many people and had so many great experiences, ultimately landing with Sports Channel, which is now SNY, as a director. And I was directing the Mets, the Islanders, the Nets, back when they were in Brooklyn, not in Brooklyn, I'm sorry, Jersey. And I did that for years as a technical director. And back then, when there were changes in programming, you had to have an announcer make the announcement. Graphics person would put the graphics card up, coming up next. These two teams are playing, and this was mostly during playoff season. And we had the NHL contract. So things were changing, and you had to have an announcer on staff. There was no internet as we know it today. He had to be there and make the announcement, jump into the booth. More than 75% of the time, we didn't have an announcer. So they would say, why don't you do it? You got a good voice. Okay, I jump in the booth, I would do it. There'd be an extra $50 in my paycheck, and I was the king of the world. But I never took it seriously as a business because it meant starving. It meant going into the city. It meant getting a manager. It meant getting an agent. I didn't know how to do any of that. Remember, there's no internet, so there's no online casting. I didn't know anybody in the business. My family didn't come from anything like this. They were in manufacturing, and they were in the schmata business. I mean, this is how we grew up. So this was all new territory for me. And at one point, I realized I really wanted to figure this out and get into it. And I just started reaching out to people and making phone calls and sending out letters. Who could help me? Who could point me in the right direction? And that's sort of how it built. You know, I still had a full-time job. I still had a family to support. I couldn't leave any of that behind to pursue the passion that I had. So I didn't. I left broadcast altogether at that point, and I worked in the jewelry industry manufacturing. And I would spend my time between working in the factory, running out to my car to do auditions, because now we do have the internet. And online casting is coming about, even though it's in a pretty, how shall I say, not the best, but it was what it was as it got started. And I stepped into it and I said, well, wow, the more auditions I could do, the more training I can get from people, because now people are starting to do coaching, the better I can get. And I'm what they call the overnight success that took 10 years. It's a slow process, and you have to put the work in like anything. You know, it doesn't just come to you. Anybody can do what I do. People say, wow, you have a great voice. Yeah, but any voice can do it. You don't have to have a great voice. And the competition is fierce. And especially now, where people have built home studios and everybody wants a piece of the action. Everybody thinks it's a get rich quick, and it's the farthest thing from the truth. You know, they hear, you made how much on that job? I'm like, yeah, but do you know how many auditions I did to get to that one job? It was monumental. So if you add it all up, what did I really get paid per hour? It really ain't that great. It ain't bad. It keeps growing, and that's the cool thing. It's because the tastes are always changing, whether it be in advertising. There's so many different genres in this business. You know, the industrial work and the e-learning took off thanks to COVID. Everybody had to offer courses for their companies, and then we had all the sexual harassment stuff, where again, people had to take classes for their companies. One thing after another, the e-learning has become a huge part of what I do. I have not done an audiobook in many, many years. I will not do an audiobook because it takes too long and it takes me away from other things. And people, they keep coming to me, can you do our book? And it used to be, they'd say, okay, here's our book, here's our budget. You would do it, you get paid. But now there's this website, ACX, which is part of Amazon, where everybody wants me to read their book, but they don't want to pay me. They want to give me a royalty share, which means if they sell the book, I'll make some money. If nobody buys your book, that was a huge waste of time. Yeah, that's why audiobooks are just out.
You know, I listen to you, David, and I sit here and talk, and I'm like, I could do that. But I'm sorry, you say anybody can do this. I listen to your voice, and you have your voice next to my voice, they're different.
Yes, texture's different.
And I'm guessing, but I'm guessing it's like anything else. Like a young kid can play baseball, but there's some kids that are just really, really good at it, right? And so I guess you didn't just wake up this way. You worked at this. You didn't just get this voice when you started speaking. You worked at it. How do you do that? What kind of work is involved? And what do you do to maintain your business? This is your business.
Maintaining the health of my instrument, and it is an instrument, is hugely, hugely important. And it's funny because there are times when, like anybody else, I'll get a cold and I don't sound right, but I still audition and I still book work. And that just proves to me that it's not so much what your voice sounds like, it's the passion that you have in your voice. There's a certain understanding for whatever the material is. You've got to deliver it in a way where you're not selling it, you're telling it, unless it's a car commercial and they want you to sell it. But again, the delivery styles always change. But there's a lot of exercises that I do and warm-ups that I have to do every single day. I also have to be very keenly aware of how I sound at various times of the day and various times of the year. Because if I'm doing an animated piece, it's a tremendous range. I'm not going to put that job up front. That job is going to have to be scheduled at the end of the day, because after I've delivered the goods for that, I'm shot. Anything else that I have to do is not going to sound what it needs to sound like. So you've got to be keenly in tune with your instrument and learn how to play it. You hand me a violin, I don't know how to play it, I'm going to have to practice. The voice is the same thing, right? We're born with it, we can speak. Learning how to use that instrument. And there are coaches that I work with specifically for that, to make sure I don't yell. I also listen, it's the T, it's the not yelling, I wash hands a lot even before COVID because I don't want to get sick. Allergy season, I'm right away on the allergy pills. I have ventilators and all kinds of stuff that I can use with the steam and the neti pots, and I mean, you name it. It really does take a lot of work to make sure that the instrument always sounds the same. I have people that come back to me every year, once a year people. We need to change the script a little bit, just want to add something to it. Okay, well, it's got to sound the same as it did back then, or we have to re-record the whole thing. I had a guy come to me last week, something I did 6 years ago. There's no way it sounded the same. And that's just because my equipment was different. I physically changed, my studio changed, everything changed. It had to be re-recorded. But for the most part, when people come back for pickups, you got to match it up. And I call it shoehorning. You got to put it right in between where it needs to go, and it's got to sound the same, which is where the audio engineering background is huge. When I go into the city, you go in, there's an engineer, he's doing everything. You step in the booth, you step out. When you own a voiceover business, you've got to know how to use the equipment. You've got to become an audio engineer. You all day long, it's recording and editing and sweetening. There's a lot of hats involved in making this business go. And it's gotten cheaper. I would say realistically, you can start a small VO business for $500 if you have a computer already, because the stuff's gotten cheaper and it sounds good. You just have to learn how to use it, and then you're in business. I mean, I know people that use GarageBand as their recording format, and I'm like, really? It's interesting. It doesn't let you do the other stuff you really need to do, but you can get by. And there's free software out there. So, at first, people were like, well, don't you feel like there's more competition as a result of all those things being available? And I'm like, yes and no. And I know that when people come to me and they ask advice, I want to get into this business. Could you help me out? Could you point me in the right direction? The first thing I do is I hand them a book. And it's a book I helped co-author. It's one of the Dummies books, Voiceover for Dummies. And I have a crate of them in the garage. So if anybody wants one, reach out. I'm more than happy to get rid of them. But what I tell people who are interested, I'm like, go ahead, read the book. When you're finished, get back to me. Nobody ever gets back to me because I think I know they're so scared off by what it takes to be in this business. It's really scary. I mean, when I'm doing a live directed session from my home in my bathrobe with major corporations, and there's a lot of money on the line and time is money, it can shake you. until you get used to it. For me, it's no big deal anymore. But at the beginning, doing a live directed session was like, wow, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. But like I tell everybody, and especially my kids, to do anything, when you start out, before you can be good, you got to stink. And before you can be great, you got to be good. It's time in, and we've all heard the 10,000 hours for proficiency. And here, it's absolutely the truth. I mean, listen, I get into sessions where the people who are directing me are half my age. They're kids. They don't have the experience. And they don't know what they're doing. Some of them do, but some of them don't. And I have to kind of take over the session and lead by example. I know what you're going to need to make this project fly. If you don't ask me for certain things, you're not going to have what you need, the building blocks to finish your project. I know what you need, so I just go ahead and give it to them. Then you got the people who want to give you line readings. Well, can you do it like this? And then they do it. And sometimes my response is, really? Do you want me to do it that bad? There's a million stories of how, you name it. The places I've recorded from, the places I've auditioned from, and I should write a book. My manager said I should be keeping notes on all that I've been through and continue to go through because it's interesting. The whole psychological part of the business and working at home by yourself. I'm not by myself anymore. It's my son and I working together. We compete. Every day we compete for the same work. He's not a little kid. He started as a kid in the business. He was the voice of Yu-Gi-Oh, the Yu-Gi-Oh card commercials. And he grew into the business. Nobody ever pushed him into it. He wanted to be in it. And now he's in it full time and we compete head to head. It's also great because we can bounce things off each other every day. And I help him shape his business. He helps me shape mine because not that I'm old, but in my advanced stage, my level of patience is not quite what it used to be. So he's like, hey, Dad, that client was asking for this. And you kind of responded in a very snippy kind of, I said, well, I'm busy. I have thousands of clients. I don't have time to hold the hand. But the reality is he helps me bring it back and reminds me that I built what I do on customer service. And it's huge. And that's why so many people continue to come back. I have my once a years, I have my once a months, I have my once a week, and then I have my daily people. If I wanted to stop it, I couldn't. It's coming in. Even if I stop auditioning, the work is still going to come in. That says a lot about how you run your business.
I'm sitting here listening to you, and I have a list of questions that I want to ask. But you keep going on, and I'm just...
It's because it's true. The topic's huge.
I love listening to this. This is it's amazing, but it's like any other business. People look from the outside and you're talking about everybody wants to get into the business, but they don't realize it's a business. It's you've got work to do. You're right. Like you said, you're an overnight success after 10 years of doing it. So, and nobody wants to, I hate to admit this, but this is episode 3. And what you said, you're going to suck at first. And the next one, you'll suck a little less. And eventually you'll turn around and you go, I'm pretty good at this. And I don't think people want to put up with that part. So it's amazing that your son is in the business. Tell me a little bit about that. How is that dynamic? He helps you, and you help him, obviously. How is that dynamic? It's a father-son business, separate business, but.
It's a father-son separate business. He has his own company. And, he's also a director. And when COVID hit, there wasn't much to direct. Nobody was doing video production. Nobody was filming anything. And he really had to do something else. And he had the background already. And again, I didn't push him. He said, yeah, you know what? Maybe I can really give this a go. And it's only been 2 years since he graduated college. So it's 2 years in. And he's built one heck of a business in that period of time. But it's a very interesting dynamic because, we'll be upstairs in the house and a big audition comes in for both of us and we race to get into the studio. Who's going to be first? Getting an audition in early is very, very important because very often what happens is where the voice can be the last piece of the puzzle. The animation's done for a project, the commercial's shot, everything's in the can. They just need a voice and they want it yesterday. So the first person they hear that they like with the price is in line, boom, they've got the job. So we elbow each other to get down 3 flights of steps. It's insanity. It really is. And then there's the scheduling part of it, because we both do live directed sessions every day. We have to see that the studio is available. We're talking right now, and we have to build a second studio in the house. There's just no way around it. And building a studio is a soundproof scenario. It's not simple. It's not inexpensive. Thank goodness it's a write-off, but you have to do it. And, building, I guess we're on the third iteration right now of what we have. And when we started, it was up in the spare bedroom. I had taken a pair of doors, regular doors, and they were freestanding. I hinged them together, like in an L position. And I covered them with soundproofing material just to help with reflectiveness. And I had that up against my back, and then I had like a mattress over the top of it, and I had a desk I had pulled out of the garbage somebody was throwing away. It's like, this will be perfect. Back then we had these mini computers. We didn't really have laptops. They were way too cost prohibitive. But if you remember the mini computers, and I would record on a Zoom H4, which was a little recording device. I'd record, I'd pull out the card, stick it in the mini laptop so I could edit it and send it out. This was so labor intensive. I don't know how and I couldn't make any money. I was like, come on, I'm doing audition after audition after audition. I couldn't make any money. And then eventually it starts to click. You figure out how to make this all work. You read books on editing and engineering, and before you know it, you got it going. For me now to go downstairs and do an audition, I can have it done inside of 2 minutes, and it's ready to go. And we treat every audition like it's the actual job. It's got to be the best it can be. And that's how the business moves. We're just coming off silly season, which is political season for us. We are absolutely exhausted from all the mudslinging we have to do with all those political commercials. We love them because they pay the bills. We hate them because they're disgusting. But listen, political season comes around every year, and this one was especially ugly. But again, that's one of the things that we're on the hook for is getting those political spots out.
Wait, talk to me. I don't mean to interrupt it, but
It's quite all right.
talk to me about the political ads. For you, it's a job. It's not a political, I'm picking sides. You're probably taking who's calling in, a job you applied for. How does that work? How does the political side of this work? I always thought it's the politician's voice you hear.
Sometimes, but if you pay attention to those spots, very often the politician is until the very end where they say they approve this message, or sometimes at the beginning where they say they approve this message. But all those TV and radio spots, it's crazier than hurricane season. It's 24/7, nights, weekends. Oh my gosh, we need this spot. Boom, it has to go. And very often, the audition that we do ends up being what goes to air, because that's how quickly they need it. Because somebody said something. Oh, we have to reply to what that statement was. We have to cut a spot right away. And that's how that runs. And most of that is kind of going through my manager, who deals with all of it, kind of keeps track of it as best she can, and she does a good job. But it's really when it gets crazy. So this time of year, we're pooped. We're glad it's over. And I'm just about to start a large e-learning project for a company that does pet wellness, about 13,000 words. They need it in a week, individual files, no problem. That's what I do. Of course, in between all that, I'm still auditioning. I'm still doing the jobs that come in. I mean, it's this never-ending stream of crap, if you will. You just never know what's going to come at you. I had a guy just the other day, he hired me on the spot for, I don't even remember what it was for. You do so much you can't remember what you're doing. But he's like, and I want to have music behind it, like it's something out of a Batman movie, like an ominous kind of a. So now there's music mixing involved. So you've got to get the audio down. I said, you approve the audio section, then we'll work on the music. You approve the music I send you, then I have to do the mix. It's a lot of back and forth, and it had to be done like in an hour, which is nuts, but that's how it goes.
Well, now talk to me a minute here. You and I know from the online services, you can go to Voices. How does this work between what you get straight up online and you have an agent, which It sounds to me that there's degrees of jobs, of size of jobs, and whether they go through an agent or whether they literally go onto Voices and say, "I like that guy. I like that guy." How does that? How does it work?
The things like Voices.com, Voice123, which are the biggest online casting in the world. The way it works is, let's say you have a project, you need a voice, you go ahead onto one of those sites, you post your script with a description of what you're looking for, and within minutes, you're going to get people like me responding with auditions. Those folks go ahead, they pick their voice talent, they make the payment, because the nice thing on those is that I don't have to worry about being paid. The payment is made up front before I turn the microphone on. So it's all held in escrow, which is a beautiful thing. I don't even have to do any billing for it because that's, again, running a business. There's billing to do, there's paperwork, taxes, you name it. But that's how that works, and it's a quick process. You get hired, they tell you how fast they need it, they tell you if it's going to have to be a directed session or not. Most of the time, it's not, because scheduling takes more time because you have so many people involved sometimes in a session. You could have up to like 8 people. You've got the writers, you've got the creative director, you've got the people who did the artwork, and everybody has an opinion. And these sessions can be painfully long. I mean, I've had sessions that are upwards of 2 hours in length. Try to perform for 2 hours on a vocal level is really, really hard. Not to mention the dynamic of not letting my son get into the studio because I'm working for 2 hours straight. So we kind of have a little satellite set up, which ain't great, but it's okay for doing some auditions. And it really just gets exhaustive getting that kind of work out the door, because while you're doing that job for 2 hours, there's auditions coming in. That's what I have to do as soon as I'm done with my session. Like when we're done with our conversation today, I see right behind you that the auditions are building in on the quieter side today because we're getting close to Thanksgiving, but there's a good 4 that have to go out, and again, time's important, but a lot of it are repeat clients. It gets easier. It changes, it's difficult, but it gets easier because you have a client base.
With that said, you go to the online auditions, you have an agent making introductions or bringing you business, but you've been in the industry long enough. You won the Voicey Award. What is the Voicey Award that you won? Best male voice?
I should have brought it up here.
For 2021? You should have brought it up here.
I have one of the other ones up here, but it's either way. It's an interesting business.
I could tell.
That's right. I mean, I hate the whole awards thing, right? But it helps sell, right? It helps sell. It also, I think, can be intimidating because somebody who has a little project, they know they have a little budget. They're like, oh, well, this guy, he was voted the best. He's going to be expensive, and, I don't want to work with him. I don't tout it too much. I tout it a little bit. Then you have the awards in the business where I don't want to get into it because people like submit themselves and pay for their award, whatever. To me, that's not really an award. The awards that I get are the ones when people say they love what I do, and when I get to read my reviews. And sometimes I just look back at my reviews on Voices.com and I'm blown away by what I read. I'm like, who are they talking about? It's like an out-of-body experience.
That is you.
So I'm like, that can't be me, right? But it is. Somehow it is. That is me. So she's actually not an agent. She's my manager. She brings me auditions, and she's crafting the marketing end of it, the online presence, and all that stuff that I have no interest in dealing with, but I know I need to have. It's just not my thing. I don't have time to mess around with any of it. It's just things have to come, things have to go. That's how it is in my life, and it's a good thing, but by 6 o'clock in the evening, somebody says, hey, what'd you work on today? And I'm like a babbling idiot. I'm like, I don't remember. I don't know. I had 3 sessions today, and I don't know. People paid me, so I guess I did something good. It gets hard to the busier you are, the harder it is to remember what you're doing.
So, okay, go through this. You've done work for the list of companies is every major company, Sony, Apple. I'm looking at Domino's Pizza, Toyota. Tell me some of these. What are some of your favorite gigs that you've done? Regardless of the size, what are some of your favorite gigs that were really interesting for you to do as a voice actor?
That's a great question. And I'm going to go with the most recent was the American Red Cross there's a blood shortage. There's always a blood shortage, but of course it's worse. And they threw something at me for the marketing they're doing is the phone calls. I don't know if you've
All the time.
received any of those. Hey, there's an emergency, blood donation, there's a shortage right now. Okay. So this was prior to Halloween. And they came to me for something. They didn't know what they wanted. They said, I don't know, spooky. I said, I got it. And right away, I was the count. And before you know it, I am doing all these blood donation calls like this. Okay? They loved it. Not only did they love it, but blood donations went up. So when I see a job make a difference, I feel great about what I do. There are scenarios like that. Then there's the pro bono work I do, like for breast cancer. Things that come to me that make a difference. Not just that I'm selling the latest protein shakes, or the latest Toyota. I mean, that's okay, it's advertising. But the stuff that actually is the call to action that moves people, I love that. That's the best part of it.
Just listening to you do the Count Dracula, I'm laughing over here. That's amazing.
Yeah, it was born out of, it was organic. It was not like, this is what we need, this is what we want to do. They didn't know. They put their trust in a professional to say, hey, what do you think we can kind of do with this? And I said, well, it's a no-brainer. Of course, now that Halloween has come and gone, they haven't hired me for anything, but that's okay.
That's all right. Did you see this? Is this, I guess, 10 years ago, where you probably started A Voice on the Run 10, 12, 13 years ago by now. Is this how you saw this going? Did you see this progression outside of your son being in there with you? Did you see this progression in the business?
I had no idea. Starting out, I can make some part-time money. Now it's got a word, the side hustle. But back then I was like, I can make some extra bucks, right? How could you make a living doing that? My wife's grandmother always had an expression whenever somebody was making a living doing something that was ridiculous. She would say, from this you make a living? And unfortunately, she never lived, she was in her 90s, but she never lived long enough to see the success of my business. I never expected to have the success I'm having. And it's not because I'm so talented. It's because I'm so passionate. And I do things smartly, and I take care of my clients, and I treat them well. It's that white glove service that makes the business fly. Because I'm not the best. I'm certainly not the best looking. People say I got a face for radio, which is good because I was in radio. But like anything you want to do, and I tell this to my kids, whatever you're passionate about, if you're really passionate about it, do it. And you'll get good at it. I never did this because I wanted to make money doing it. It wasn't about making money. It was about hearing my work and having people be moved by it. That's what it was about. The money will come. That's the byproduct. And it turned into, it's ridiculous now. I remember the days when, money sucked, having a job, working for somebody, paycheck to paycheck. And listen, things aren't so perfect all the time. I go through periods that are slow. And that's what people say, I should take a vacation. They're like, why don't you take a vacation between Christmas and New Year's? I'm like, you know why? Because every other local yokel who takes a vacation and isn't working, I get the jobs. Right? Auditions that come in Saturday night, 11 o'clock. That's low-hanging fruit, man. I get the job. So the weekend stuff, I love the weekend stuff. I also like to maybe get a day out of the studio. I try and make Saturday my day where I'm not going to work, unless there's an emergency situation. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. I can make it to 5 o'clock on a Friday afternoon. Looks like my weekend is clear. All of a sudden, a big job comes in. They're like, yep, you got to work on this over the weekend, got to have it. And I'm like, yeah, no problem. You got it. Because my happy place is in front of my microphone. It's where I have to be.
It's funny. This is episode 3, and I've spoken now and I speak with tons of entrepreneurs. I love talking to business owners. This is my passion. I like hearing your stories and how you built this business. But every single one of them, and everyone I've spoken with off camera and on, clients, taking care of your clients, taking care of your customers. That's it. That's the core of any business that I've ever spoken with anybody. Taking care of your customers, taking care of your clients. It's nothing like it.
Yeah.
Somebody else is going to take care of them for you.
Because if I don't do it, somebody else is going to do it, And like I said, it's the rush that I get from a job well done, the client's happy, and, I guess I'll get paid.
You knew.
My accounts receivable needs love. Somebody's got to spend some time going through it because there are people that, we didn't realize we didn't pay you yet. I'm like, well, you didn't realize. Then you have to be a real business owner.
Yeah. So, okay, let me ask you one last question. We'll wrap this up. What's the future of this? This has evolved so much in 12 years. How does this evolve? How does your business evolve in the next 5 years, 10 years, 20 years?
I wish I had the answer to that question because things are changing. You've got AI. You've got these companies that are developing speech synthesis. And a friend of mine had gotten in a bad situation in a TikTok scenario where her voice was being used over and over again, and they built it into the system, and she didn't even know about it. Went to court. She won. Quite a payday, but that's not the point. That's kind of the next thing, is computers talking. And some people already use these systems. You can tell it's not a person. The emotion is still not something that can be built into this. It's okay, and for certain applications, people are using it. Dialogue replacement is now something happening, like with celebrity voices. And again, here's the business owner part of the business. I have to know what these trends are. I need to know what's going on. And I've even thought about getting involved in a company where if it's a job that comes to me with a silly low budget, they're not concerned with really what it's like, I can basically farm it out, yet it's under my umbrella, like text to voice, right? They have that today. You type it in, the computer speaks it. Something like that. But then I'm like, when people come to me, they're coming to me for me. They're not coming to me to get something done because I can just get it done. There's something that they want that I don't necessarily know what it is. There are things that people hear in the texture of my voice that I don't hear, but it's there. And it's what I work to make great, so I can't fight that. So I don't know what's going to be. I'm just going to continue doing what I do. We'll see where it goes. I'll never be retired because I wouldn't know what to do with myself if I'm not in the studio. Quite honestly, I love what I do so much, I almost feel like I am retired. I don't have a boss, yet I have a lot of bosses. At the end of the day, I go to bed and I'm like, okay, tomorrow we start fresh, new challenges. I don't know what's coming tomorrow. I have no idea what jobs are going to hit tomorrow. And that's exciting. I used to get excited. I'll never forget, I booked my first job. I think I got paid $25. And I was the king of the world. And I knew early on, because Don LaFontaine, the movie trailer guy who unfortunately we lost a few years ago, and although I never got to spend time and learn directly from him, his circle of influence and his friends are now people I work with that are my circle of influence and my friends. And one of the things Don would say is remember that feeling of that first job, that excitement, and hang on to it. Because you're going to have times when you're not booking work and things aren't going well and the client's pissing you off. And you have to remember that feeling. And it's hard to hang on to. But I try and hang on to that every single day. And having that attitude of gratitude for what I do, this didn't happen by luck. I didn't win a lottery. I worked hard to get where I am. I knew what I wanted, and every day I see the target. You can't hit the target if you can't see it. And I make it happen, and when people come to me and they want information on the business and how to get into the business, I have a really dear friend who I had come to him. I knew he's a big wig in the business. And we met through my wife being at the stable where my daughter was riding, and my wife was sitting on a bench next to somebody who happens to live next to this guy who's a big guy in the voice industry at the time. He's still big. But the business changed. And where he went, and I couldn't believe he even took my call. He went from being one of my early mentors to now me mentoring him. As things have changed in the business, he needed to learn how I have gotten to where I am with the environment the way it is today. So now I'm his teacher. So it's crazy. I don't know what's coming next in the business. I just know that as long as I can speak, I will. When I don't have to speak, I drink tea and rest. Doesn't happen that often. And my wife, support. You got to have a support system. I mean, think about it. Anybody else, you're in a restaurant or you're watching a movie, I got to jump out. The support is there. And the other thing is this, there can't be any noise in my house when I have a live session going on. And she makes sure of that. The dog doesn't bark. It's those little things that make the difference. And having that support system, and I don't care who it's from, a husband, a wife, significant other, child, it doesn't make a difference. That's going to help you achieve your goals. And they also have to help see the vision that you see. If they don't see that you can be successful and you can win, it's hard. It's much harder. They're like, yeah, okay, whatever. Good luck, blah, 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 blah. You have to have it. Without it, you're done. So support.
Yeah, I'm thankful for my support. I'm thankful for my support system. I agree. I can't agree with you more on that. I can't agree with you more. David, thank you so much. It was amazing speaking with you. Such great insight. I love doing this. You talk about doing something you love. I could talk business about other people's businesses all day long. This was great. Thank you so much.
It was my pleasure. You get me going. It's kind of like a snowball, right? You shove it down the hill and it just starts going and picking up speed. And people are like, oh man, like when somebody sits down because they want to know the business and they think it's going to be a 10-minute conversation. Or I'm coaching somebody, because occasionally I'll do coaching. They're like, yeah, they pay me for an hour of coaching, and we're together for like 3. And they're like, how much more do I owe you? I said, nothing. It's my pleasure. I don't coach. I don't have time to coach. For me, it's work, work, work. But it was my pleasure. I'm glad you reached out, that we had some time together. And if I could inspire anybody, not just in this business, but in any business that they want to do, entrepreneurship, man, that's where it's at. You want it? Go get it. Like my wife wants a 64 Mustang convertible, right? I'm like, go get it. She's not asking me to get it for her. I'd be happy to, but I'm like, you want it? Go get it. Follow your passion and get it.
Beautiful, beautiful. David, again, thank you so much. Everybody, have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Meet Long Island. We certainly hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions or suggestions for future episodes, leave them in the comments or reach out to us directly. Remember to subscribe, and we hope to have you back for the next exciting episode of Meet Long Island.